We have one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Congresswomen, Republican Congresswoman Paulina Luna. She is the chairwoman of the task force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets. She represents Florida's 13th district. She has been standing up, I mean, really kind of alone at times, it seems, for transparency in government, pushing for the release of critical documents and investigating issues ranging from federal misconduct to foreign influence, U.S. politics. Welcome, Anna.
So happy to be here, Glenn.
Good to have you. Anna, you saw the release today from Tulsi. Is this going anywhere?
It's going to have to. I was just on an earlier segment with one of my friends on a different network, and I said, if the Department of Justice does not make arrests, you have known intelligence officials who use their position of power to ultimately not just divide the country, but to undermine a sitting president, and then literally using their positions to then launch these investigations into the unconstitutional surveillance of then the president of the United States. If they don't arrest people, this systemic corruption will just continue. And I always think, Glenn, you know, it's serendipitous timing, because right now we're also seeing so much come out about Martin Luther King, JFK, and the connections to the intelligence agencies then. And as you're seeing, those resulted in the death of a sitting U.S. president, as well as some of the most historical civil rights leaders at our time. And so what I'll tell you is there must be action. It can't just be, you know, strongly worded letters. A lot of people say, well, why isn't Congress doing more? And so I'd like to just remind people, because Congress is not a enforcement mechanism. The only tool that we really have is inherent contempt, and that's something that even then, so a lot of Republicans are squeamish on using. So it's going to be the Department of Justice that will have to make arrests. And mind you, 18 U.S. Code 1001 says that if you are charged with lying to Congress or falsifying, for example, reports, that it comes with a 7-year sentence and up to $250,000 fine.
So somebody told me, they said, Glenn, what are you going to charge him with? And I said, falsifying documents. He said, it's the intel community. That's what they do for a living. How many times have they falsified? And I'm like, well, but that's not right. I mean,
no, it's not right.
Right.
It's not right. And it's also not right that they then used it to illegally surveillance using unconstitutional means, violating the civil liberties of many people. And they really use this to destroy lives. You know, I've yet to really see many of the mainstream outlets dedicate the time that they dedicated to push the Russia hoax to really retracting and correcting this. And they haven't.
But we just went through chalkboard, and it's really the same group of people in scandal after scandal. It's the same people over and over during the last 10 or 15 years. So are these the ones that were released today, were these the documents that they were looking for at Mar-a-Lago? Because I remember speculation that they were looking for a specific document that Donald Trump, they were afraid he had, that he said, once I release this, it'll expose everything. This is pretty damning.
I mean, I think that they were probably using that more or less as a means of trying to push the narrative that President Trump was this, you know, scandalous crook, which is clearly not true. He's probably one of the cleanest politicians in U.S. history, given the amount of investigations that have been launched onto him and his personal life of, you know, his family as well. But what I will say is that, you know, when you're looking at what's really coming out of ODNI, and I don't think that this is going to be the only thing that's dropping. I think there's more. You know, a lot of people aren't even covering the fact that Tulsi just stood at the White House podium and stated that there was all this stuff in regards to Hillary Clinton's health that the intelligence agencies were then covering up, that she was really unfit to be in that position. We saw that happen with Biden. So unvetted, unchecked corruption, I don't care if it's happened in the past, it should not happen any longer, which is why I'm encouraging the Department of Justice to make arrests.
You know, when I saw that this morning, when it first came out, I thought to myself, my gosh, it's exactly the same with her health. They denied it at the time. We all watched it and we're like, what is that?
Remember, she fell. She fell that one time. Do you remember that? And they tried to play it off.
But beyond that, that information was coming from the Russian intel. We had a source. Russian intel was saying they knew the Democrats were afraid because of the hacking of her health, et cetera, et cetera. And then it talked about the scandals that she was involved in. I mean, again, what they say we're doing, they're doing. They were hoping that she would be a puppet.
They were, but let me just say that, you know, sunshine is always the best disinfectant. And it is really egregious and terrible what we're finding out that they covered up, and then also too what they use to really violate people's constitutional rights. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't also happen on our side. And so that's why,
Right.
in regards to total transparency and accountability, it's not members of Congress that are supposed to hold other members of Congress, accountable, or presidents to hold other presidents accountable. It's the American people. And so if you're just sitting there and you're angry and you're like, well, why is there no change? Well, what are you doing to help bring forward that change? Because you can't just post on the internet. You have to get involved. And this is a call to action. The American people really do. Stop sending us the same terrible people over and over and over again that are complicit in all this, not wanting to do anything and not really wanting to uphold and serve their oath of office.
And also standing up and saying, I mean, this is an easy one, standing up to the Senate and saying, put the U.S. attorneys, get them passed for the president. There are no U.S. attorneys. They're all stacked up for their approval in the Senate.
Glenn, I am just a little congresswoman from Florida's 13th district, and I feel like I am very much so sometimes the only person that's calling this out, not just in the House, but also in the Senate. And so what I'll tell you is that we need fearless leaders. We need more people to really take a stand, because right now we're outnumbered. It doesn't mean we're not going to bring change, but there's no reason why this should be stalling the way that it is when we have the House, the Senate, and the White House.
So the House intel review of the ICA, Russia's influence campaign targeting the 2016 election, what she released today, that was in a vault. There were 5 copies, but it was part of the intel review done by the House when Trump was in office.
And they didn't release it.
Why?
I would say because former people that were head of the intelligence community. And remember, if you go back to I'll just use this as an example, the speakers fight in January of 2 years ago. A lot of people were like, why are these people fighting for such changes in the House of Representatives, whether it was people in charge of committees or the Rules Committee, which determines the legislation that comes to the floor? It was because it was our own people that were blocking this information. I actually just brought this up earlier today. Why did the former ODNI not release this information? And why is it that you have Republican senators now trying to claw back Tulsi's power? What are they so afraid of? What are they so afraid of that they're then trying to tell her that she doesn't have the authority to do what she's doing? So look, accountability is key, but they should have released this information then. And you're really seeing, even though it's the same president, 2 very different administrations. The administration in 2016 under President Trump was filled with a lot of swampy people and people that were trying to stonewall and block his agenda. It's totally different right now.
All right. So now let me change subjects with you. Let's go to Jeffrey Epstein. I think that I don't know what the truth is. I think I know what the truth is, but I don't think anything can be proven because everything is going to have everybody's fingerprints on it for the last 5 years. What's true, what's not, what's planned. I mean, just look what was released today. You don't know what's true. You don't know what they changed. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to the truth, but I have been pounding on this, and the president is pissed at people like me right now because I keep bringing this up, because this is the poster child for transparency. This is the thing that everybody points to and says, it's children. Who could possibly be against releasing the information about people who were molesting children, if they were? And it doesn't seem like anybody is hearing that. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I was going to tell you is, I was one of the people that was most critical of how this was being handled. And I actually, at the beginning of Congress, was literally the only member of Congress that was asking the DOJ for clarification on this. I don't believe that this was serendipitous timing, but in February, actually, I became aware of an individual that was reporting that there was destruction of evidence at the FBI.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking about this. I was like, look, this is a serious issue. About a week later, or a couple of days later, you had reports that were actually being reported on CNN saying that, the 7th floor of the CIA, which is where a lot of the decisions were made, were worried that former agents were going to be selling our information to foreign countries that don't like us, which is espionage and super illegal. And at this point in time, I actually had introduced a piece of legislation called the Shred Act that was actually going to increase the mandatory minimums for people that were basically a part of destroying evidence. I bring that up because when I talked to this individual, he said, According to what I'm hearing, the information that's being destroyed, or I'm thinking that the information that's being destroyed is pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein, the Russia collusion hoax, all of this. And that destruction started taking place, from what I was told, after or towards the tail end of the Biden administration under the former deputy director of the FBI. So I think that that is a valid and legitimate thing. Now, that was being reported back in February and March.
Right.
And Fox News actually picked up on that. I actually have a documented paper trail of that. And so when President Trump said, look, this is something that basically has been cooked up by the Democrats, it's actually not far off from what we're being told if there was election tampering and evidence. Now, the president has ordered all legitimate, credible information to be released by the attorney general. And the attorney general is, I believe, going to do that. And so I will tell you that, I think its frustration stems from the Democrats who said nothing. If you look at all of their social media posts for the last 4 years, said nothing. You have a Democrat senator that actually blocked Marsha Blackburn's subpoena for the Epstein flight logs. So they're using this as a right now political tool and tactic, when in actuality, some of us genuinely care about, the fact that no one wants creepy pedophiles out there. But that's exactly why I think the push for transparency is there. So look, there's been a subpoena that has been brought forward in oversight. Ghislaine Maxwell will be coming to Congress to give a deposition. That's going to be all out there for the American people.
Will that be, or will that be private? Closed door.
Well, the deposition, for my knowledge, and I have to check with Comer, but that will all be something that the American people can look through. I just don't know if they're going to be filming it. And I'm not the chairman, so I don't know the context in which it's happening. I'm just speaking to historically how it's done. But just like you saw with the AutoPen scandal, when the depositions come in, that's all publicly available to the American people. Then I will follow up by saying this, that, you also have at the same time the DOJ saying, hey, Ghislaine, if you have information on a third party that we can bring charges on, come talk to us. And now Ghislaine's attorneys are saying, well, she's in fear of her life or safety. Well, what I will tell you is this. Clearly, you're not supposed to be interfering with someone who's supposed to testify to Congress or the DOJ. So there's a lot of focus on this right now. And obviously, the whole might of the federal government would come down on anyone that would try to intimidate someone from not speaking. But what I will also tell you, I think it should. I'm not at the DOJ, but it should. But what I will also say is I don't think that she deserves a pardon. I think that what she did for her crimes is wrong. And so I think that, and I don't speak for the administration, but I think that it's outside of the realm of possibility for her to get a pardon. So again, I'm not speaking for the admin, but I wouldn't give her a pardon at all.
So many things are going on. We've kind of lost track of the riots on the streets and the Chinese influence on our own streets.
Hey, Temu riots disappeared, Glenn. You noticed that?
What did?
The Temu riots.
Yeah.
The Chinese riots.
Gone. Why is that?
Completely. Well, I think that it's because they have a new talking point, obviously focusing on what's all come out. They don't really know what lane they're going to fight on, because right now they're getting blasted from all sides with facts and transparency. But I have an update on that. So the Neville Singham letter that we sent from oversight was undeliverable. They wouldn't accept receipt of it. And so because we are tracking and pretty sure that Neville Singham's currently hiding out in China, there's a letter that Chairman Comer just approved to go to the U.S. Treasury to freeze all of his assets.
Wow. We have this dead to rights, don't we? It looks like a pretty solid case.
Which the Singham case for the Treasury?
Yes.
I would say so. If you don't accept receipt of a letter, Congress is trying to get you to testify, you're hiding in another country and you're funding all this stuff and you don't want to explain it, and then you can't, get a subpoena. Well, guess what? The U.S. Treasury, I think, has a pretty good reason to freeze assets. Again, I'm not the Treasury, but if I were them, I would do it.
So the what I said back in 2009 that everybody mocked me for, I said, it's going to, the communists and the socialists and the anarchists and the Islamists are all going to work together. At some point, they're all going to come together to destabilize the Western world, and it will start in the Middle East, then it'll go to Europe, and then it'll end here. And their end goal is to overthrow the Western world. And here it is. Everybody said, those people won't work together. They're all like now in one candidate in New York and Minneapolis. It's insane how this is happening. And they seem to be getting more and more dangerous. The real uber left, and I'm not sure if the people like Chuck Schumer are afraid of the people that they've really kind of empowered over the years, or they're in with them? Because nobody seems to be doing anything about it, at least on their side.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it's not even just Democrats, it's also Republicans. There's a lot of people that just don't care because they just want to get elected and, they're old and, they get towards the end of their life. I'm serious. I don't know what it is, but there's a fatigue that happens. And I genuinely believe this, Glenn. I think that if you are in office for over 10 years, that something ain't right with your ticker. And I say that because this is such you're getting attacked. The campaign schedule is grueling. The travel schedule is grueling. And so if you're going to come up here, you really have to kind of have your heart in the right place because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you is, the ones that don't work, the ones that kind of just fly under the radar, they don't do anything. They don't stand up. They don't do the right thing. They just kind of want to get reelected and not cause any quote unquote controversy. Last time I checked, standing up against injustices is not controversy. It's called doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So I think that there's fatigue. That's why you need young people in. And that's why I've tried to encourage so many young people. I unfortunately am one of the youngest members of Congress, and I'd like to see myself as not one of the youngest members of Congress. I'd like there to be more.
Yeah, so would I. Let me ask you, there's two things that you've kind of been exposing. One is just the amount of drinking and debauchery that seems to be going on Capitol Hill. But on top of that is the sexual harassment lawsuits and the slush fund to cover the tracks. I imagine that's happening on both parties. Do you believe?
Yeah. Did you see my tweet that I did recently? I said, isn't it interesting? When I was out there fighting alone on this hill for transparency, not one person wanted to help out. Now you're seeing all these people, the same people that are, busy getting wasted, having affairs on their spouses, the ones that are having their offices quietly pay off the sexual harassment suits against them. They don't want to vote for that. They don't want to vote to ban insider trainings for members of Congress, but they'll sit there and they'll try to basically push a BS thing when in actuality, you look at their track record and they are literally the worst of the worst of the worst. And I look at that and I laugh because if the American people knew who some of these people were, they would never vote for them. And the fact is some of these people also too pay off reporters to not write about them, or the same reporters that are writing fluff stories about them or getting drinks with them after work. So yeah, it is literally, I've met some of the best people, but I have also met some of the worst people I've ever met in my life in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. Well, you're doing a great job, and I thank you so much for everything you're doing. Every time I see
Glenn.
you are out front like a bulldog, and I'm rooting for you every step of the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless.